Welcome to Traveling Down, Biblical Archaeology for the 21st Century. I'm Gary Byers. This is Dr. Steve Collins, Director of the Archaeological Excavation at el-Hammam. We call him our local rock star. And so we're going to talk about some of the rocks there at el-Hammam because
a lot of those.
A lot of them, and every one of them that we see there today, it didn't just grow there. They were picked up and carried by somebody from someplace else.
There are no stones of building quality on that hill, on the natural hill that underlies it. So when people want, Larissa's got her mouth open over there. She's when you stop, when you know how many stones are at our site, you look across, it's just littered solid with stones. Every single stone on that site was artificially transported there.
And was part of a wall, a structure.
For building purposes, for foundations or for other structures. And it's amazing how much there is.
Amazing. It's an amazing place. So we got rocks from all periods. They go back as early as the Chalcolithic period. We've got part of a house,
and we even
right
have
on bedrock.
We even have some pottery Neolithic sherds, but we haven't seen any architecture. But I'm sure somewhere around there,
there's something.
There's some Neolithic stuff.
And that stuff goes right on from that early period, right through the days of the city of Sodom, right through the Old Testament to the New Testament period of the city of Livius, the capital of Perea, the Roman province. And so just an amazing array of stuff all the way through. Today, let's talk about el-Hammam and Solomon.
And this is pretty solid stuff.
I think so.
I mean, it's not. I mean, we're not speculating here much because the Bible's very clear that Solomon had 12 administrative districts. And you have to have administrative district. And David probably had some of this started. I'm not sure it really talks about that. It really attributes this to Solomon. But, I mean, David has a kingdom, and you have to have distribution systems, and you have to have a way to feed people and move commodities. And so some of this could have even started in the time of King David. And it actually, we have dated it, radiocarbon dated it to the late 11th to the first part of the 10th century, which would really include David in this. But Solomon had 12 administrative districts. 2 of them were in the Transjordan, were on the east side of the Jordan River. One of them was taken up the same space for what we call the Reuben and Gad tribal allotment.
Which is down south.
By
the Dead Sea.
And that would equate to his Gilead district. And then there's another district up north in the more of the Bashan area that would be. Now I'm not sure the Bible tells us which one is, what the number is. One's number 11, one's number 12 or whatever. But there were 12 administrative districts. And each administrative district had a store city, had a central, might call it a capital city of a district, district capital, but it was a store city where grains from that area and from other areas could be stored as those grain stores and food stores were needed for military purposes or for the palace at Jerusalem or for purposes of feeding soldiers or administrators who are out and about in areas where they need to be taken care of. In other words, you have to have a food distribution for all of the grains, all the cereal crops, other commodities, olives, those olive oil, to be distributed. So we think we have a store city. Well, I wouldn't say that. We know we have a store city.
We do.
Around the end of the 11th, beginning of the 10th century, we have, talking about BC, of course, which is, and we're talking about this is the time of Solomon, King David and King Solomon. We have around the site hundreds of silos dug in, stone-lined silos some, you know, 1.5 meters, some 2 meters, and they're dug into the ground, going down. Now they may have had some little bit of a manifestation on top, maybe a mud brick structure on top that allowed them to bring it a little bit higher and fill it a little bit fuller. But they're all over the place. They're punched all over the top of the tell. They're punched into the sides of the tell. Just hundreds of these silos. This is what a store city is. So it starts out, we call it our silo phase. So in the time of King David, King Solomon, this became a major store city. It became a city that could accommodate in storage facilities a massive amount of food.
Now, I grew up in the Midwest, and Illinois and Iowa, we just had these silos. That's the term. It was always used, silos. And of course, they're round, and they go up even 100 feet or so. And that's where they would store, usually it was corn in Iowa. And so when we think of silos, we think of something, a round structure going up. But in fact, in the Bible world, their silos were cut into the ground, subterranean, kept it cooler, kept it in much better shape. And then they would, as you said, they'd cap it off at the top in some way, and a little mud brick on top, a stone structure, and add a few more feet of stuff would make sense. So this was where they would store. You'd have your own silo at your house, but you would also have these. There's so many of them. These are clearly governmental silos. This is not domestic stuff. And one of them, we excavated this last season, that was probably almost 10 meters in diameter, wasn't it?
3.
Oh, 3? Only 3?
3 or 4. 10 is...
Forget 10. 3 or 4. 10 feet.
10 would take 10 feet.
Yeah, 10 feet.
10
3
feet.
or 4.
It's big.
Yeah.
And and stone lined, and plastered.
Yep.
And they were probably all of the ones we found are stone lined. But they're probably all plastered as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of a limey plaster. So they could store. Now we haven't done this calculation yet, so I'm just going to pull this out of thin air. But we're storing tens of thousands of cubic meters, let's say bushels, of grain in these silos. It's huge capacity. It's not small. It's a huge capacity. Now, eventually, in the next 100 or so years, it went through several phases, and the storage city of Solomon is now coming down into a later period, past Rehoboam, getting into the divided monarchy period.
Yes.
But it eventually culminated with the building of at least one massive warehouse.
Silos are gone now. They're buried.
The silos are buried down.
Yeah.
They kept building new stuff, bigger, better, all the way through the history. And finally we had this massive warehouse with we call it a governor's residence, just attached right to it, with a big tower, which we excavated this past year in 2020. So it's a big facility. And what was interesting about that, when we got into it, there was a little smashed pot here and a few sherds over there. But for most part, it was empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why in the world is this big? And we're talking about...
It had been destroyed.
Yeah.
And in destruction, you would expect everything that was in it was all laying there destroyed.
And these are big walls. These are meter-wide walls.
Yeah.
Huge stone foundations, meter-wide walls, and just row after row of rooms with little benches where you could put, line it with jars of grain. And Almost nothing. Now, we did get some good radiocarbon dates out of it, and it was destroyed finally around the end of the 9th century. We think it has to be done by the Arameans, Hazael, he's mentioned in the Bible. But where did it all go? Somebody wanted it. They didn't just want to destroy the city. They wanted to take, why would you? Why would you just burn up all this grain?
Yeah,
so they probably brought wagons, loaded up all of the stored grain in the jars, took it away, and then burned the city. It seems very clear that that's what they did.
And let's talk about that burning of the city. So the warehouse was empty. All the good stuff, if you would, all the stuff that an army would go after, that was all taken out apparently. Whatever jars, there were no jars left, there's nothing left from inside the jars, all gone. And that was burnt. It was destroyed. We have roof beams, wooden roof beams falling down. But the governor's palace or residency was really messed up.
Yeah, they did a number. They did a number on the governor's residence, and we found a lot of pottery. We found jars of grain, and other kinds of really nice pottery, lamps. What else did we find? Juglets, all kinds of stuff, grinders, beautiful stuff. But there was this kind of basement feature underneath a very large tower. The walls were 3 meters thick, Gary. 3 meters thick, which means this was probably a 4, 5, 6-story tower. But in that basement, the tower's fallen down. The mud bricks are only standing up maybe a meter or two. Maybe we have 8 or 10 or 12 courses of mud bricks, but that basement is going between the stone foundations all the way down. We had 3 meters of ash. Now it takes about 10 meters of wood, piled up wood, to create 1 meter of ash. Where in the world did all this ash, and it's all the same ash, it just fills this hole. And I'm trying to think of a scenario. How in the world did all of this ash get here? And what I think happened is this. I think the boys in the army, Hazael's army, the Arameans, wanted to have a little fun. I mean, they've already taken everything they wanted to take away from the city. They have this huge tower, multi-stories with wood beams, wood floors, and a wood roof. I think they gathered up furniture and wood from the entire city, anything that would burn good. And they brought it to this tower. And they loaded every room in the tower, 5 stories worth or so, loaded it with wood, doused it with olive oil, and set it on fire. And stood back and
s'mores,
had a good chuckle over it. And I just kind of think you would do. I mean, you got to have a little fun, right?
Yeah.
You captured a city, you're going to destroy it. Well, let's make a fun. This is a huge tower. Let's have some fun with this. And I think they set it on fire. And all of that stuff burned, and it all lands in the basement. It just 3 meters of ash. Is amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are the things that we can kind of glean from now the Bible does tell us about Hazael's incursion and all of that stuff. So we can link it to the biblical story, but these kinds of things that we see in the archaeology can give us an indicator about what happened, kind of the side story, the backstory of things that they did that never got recorded in written history, but we can see it in the archaeology.
Yeah. Pretty amazing what archaeology shows us about what happened and reminds us about maybe human nature, how we operate, how we think, and the kind of stuff we do, good or bad, especially the bad. We seem to see that from archaeology a lot. Well, Tal el-Hammam is an amazing place. By the way, you can come and dig with us. You can go to our website at digsodom.com and you can find out about joining our excavation, and we'd love to have you come and be with us, and you can be the person to find the next really cool thing at our site. Well, we're talking about Tal el-Hammam in Jordan, a wonderful site from the biblical world, and we're very blessed to get to be there and excavate there year after year. Always looking for new volunteers. We'd love to have you. We're glad to have you join us today for Troweling Down Biblical Archaeology for the 21st Century, Archaeology at Tal el-Hammam, Jordan. Thanks for joining us.